This is the Sega Saturn video game controller, and this is the Model 1. There's a Model 2 controller that looks a lot like this. We'll get to that later. But this is the Model 1 controller, which came out with the original Sega Saturn in 1995, and is a kind of a unique design here. As you can see, it's got this textured outer rim, which is nice and big and easy to grip, and then a glossy center plastic piece that shows the reflection of the camera. And it says Sega Saturn right there and Sega there. This controller is really nice and has a high build quality that's common with most Sega products. It's a large controller. Feels a lot like the Sega Genesis controllers back in the day. Has some nice molding there that you can grip your hand into. It sits very comfortably and is easy to play for long periods of time. Let's try to get a close-up look here of the textured surface. It says Sega. There's the start button, Sega Saturn. The D-pad sits in a recessed spot on the controller here. You can see this is a really unique design. It's a smooth plastic, yet your thumb fits nicely inside of it. It's not textured at all. It has these four little parts here that you can grip your thumb into when you're playing a shooting game or a fighting game or any of the other excellent Sega Saturn games. It's a 6-button layout, which is something that we saw previously on the Sega Genesis controller, the 6-button controller. And the buttons feel really nice. They're very responsive, easy to grip onto, different sizes, so you can immediately tell what button you're pushing. If we look on top of the controller here, you can see there's two other buttons. We started seeing these kind of buttons with the Super Nintendo controller, the PlayStation controllers. And here on the Sega Saturn controller, they're a bit awkward to push when you're playing the games, but they're not too bad. I really like this controller and find it to be very well designed and very comfortable. There's no sharp edges that irritate your fingers or thumbs after long periods of gaming. It's a lot like the Sega Genesis controller. I do think that they made some improvements when they made the Model 2 controller for the Sega Saturn. We'll get into that in a totally separate review. We'll take a look here at the controller plug. This plugs into the front of the Sega Saturn. These are very snug, and I think this is a nice, simple design. Overall, Sega makes excellent hardware. You know, I've always been a fan of Sega hardware if you've ever seen this show before. And the Sega Saturn controller, excellent controller to play with a variety of Sega Saturn video games. Alright, we're going to try something a little bit different here today. We're going to start classic game room video game controller cockfighting and see how the Sega Saturn controller does against the Magnavox Odyssey 2 silver controller. Alright, not sure how to do this, but let's get started. Go! Oh god. No! Oh! Saturn wins. Look at that. Sega is victorious once again.